Good evening, everybody. Welcome along to EFL Debate. This is the League One podcast, but tonight we're going for a single club in focus, and that club tonight is Lincoln City. So, delighted to be joined by my man Jake Tonge from T-Lop, the League One podcast. Not this one. No, that League One podcast, not this one. There we go. That League One podcast. Got to get that right. And Channel 72. I'm sure I'll get that right next time. Jake, lovely to have you on, mate.
Oh, Gab, it's been a nightmare. I know we've had this in the works for a while, and then I completely forgot it was my dad's birthday, so I've rushed home from Boston. If you know your National League North clubs, you'll know from to Lincoln, which is about
Not
an
from
hour.
America.
No, I've not hopped on a plane from Massachusetts.
What's that? Gab needs me. I've got to
Yeah,
head over.
yeah, I've got the call up from Gab. You know, it's time to go. But yeah, no, I'm delighted to be here, man. I'm delighted to be talking about Lincoln, especially at the moment. We're quietly going on a bit of a good run. I know there's a lot of draws in there, but there's a lot of positive performances, and I think, like you've mentioned here in your title, I think we are Scoobs is cooking something up for next year.
Little Scooby snacks. Um, I most people will probably say that pretend they don't think about next season until I don't know June or July. But to be honest, I think for certain teams that are mid-table, where they're not going to go down, you know that the playoffs is too much of a stretch at this point, you do kind of start casting an eye towards next season. And so I wanted to get a little bit of a check-in with you, Jake, on how things are cooking, because Lincoln City are a club that I'm actually tentatively quite excited about because as we've spoken about on this podcast before, Jake, there's so much about the way Lincoln City are run that I rate very, very highly. I think you've got a very talented coach as well, and a good core of players, and it feels like there's some good foundations there.
Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, obviously, I've had I've been very fortunate enough to have chats with the likes of Jez George and people like that, and you get to see how the club, the club are very open, Gab. So, anyone can go along to these events. The club put them on for transparency. For example, the event that I went to gave a really good presentation on how the club approached the summer window of 2023. And I thought that was really interesting and really exciting that the club would put that on. So they showed people that the club went after. They said why it might not have worked. They went about how they recruit players. And when you see all that, you go, well, you know what? We're in really good hands. Jez George gets a lot of raft on Twitter, and I completely disagree with it. He's clearly a very intelligent football man, and we've got good footballing departments around the head coach, that report to Jez, the likes of our sports science and our talent identification. And you've only got to look at the EPC or the Elite Performance Centre. A lot of clubs at the same level as us, Gab, would be banging on for a facility that we've got. So, yeah, I agree. I think under Scabala, which we've on the pitch now, we've seen. I think in the last 6 weeks, you've really seen a Scabala team. I think the players he's got his feet under the table. We're actually going into the opposition penalty area, which is quite exciting. We're scoring a couple of goals. There's a real good feel-good place around at the moment. And I said about maybe 7 weeks ago, just before the Blackpool game, I was dreading going into games. Yes, we played Derby, Bolton, Northampton. We had a really tough run over Christmas, Blackpool. But I'm going into Exeter on Saturday, absolutely bouncing the fact that I get to see them again. That they're playing with confidence, and yeah, it is just really cooking. Obviously, the one thing that maybe clouds over the cooking element is obviously we have a lot of assets at the football club. Now the club have to make money. And I'm not an idiot. We're not idiots. They have to make money. We have to be able to bring players in, sell them on. That's the model, as it is called. And I do worry about perhaps some of our bigger assets being sold this summer, which would be a real hindrance. But I would back the football club to go and get the right player in because, like I say, I've been privy to the information with Jez George, and the club get more hits than misses than they do in the window. I don't think there are many misses. I think if you look at the summer recruitment from last year, I'd say that Lucas Jensen's been a hit so far. Ethan Hamilton's been a hit so far. goodness me, I'm trying to remember who came in the summer. There was quite a few, and a lot of them have been hits. There's not been many misses, but yes, long way around it, Gab. Yes, I'm very excited for next year. Although I still have a really sneaky feeling we can pick up maximum points this month against Exeter, Port Vale, and Shrewsbury, which I don't think is pushing the boat out. I'm saying something could happen. I don't think it will, but something could happen.
Yeah, we'll see. I still feel. Do you know? I've not actually looked at the gap to the playoff
That's
spots because
12
I've not
points,
even.
I think.
I'm not 12 points. Is it?
Yeah,
Mate,
it's a
13.
big gap.
It's 13 points, Jake. It's February.
It's a big
That's,
gap. But
the gap's too big. And you're asking, you win those 3 games, and even then you're asking your Oxfords, your Peterboroughs, and
yeah,
your
this is the thing.
Stevenages to.
I think we can take care of our business. I think in terms of fixtures left, we've played a lot of the good teams twice. So we've played Derby, Peterborough, and Bolton all twice. We've
Hmm.
still got Oxford, Stevenage, and Portsmouth still to come in that top 6. Um, but realistically, I don't think it's going to happen. But it's always good to have something to think about, isn't it? The fact that if we can close that, even if we can close that gap to something like, at the end of the season, if we miss out by 5 points, I think again that's still quite an achievement from where we are at the minute. So
Yeah, absolutely.
positivity is the word.
Positivity, of course. Do you know what? You used the word open there to describe Lincoln City as a club, and I do really like how Michael Skabala fits into that ethos, because as much as I have a lot of admiration for the foundations that Mark Kennedy laid, and the unbeaten home record last season, and some of those smash and grab away wins, and those defensive that solidity. Um, there does seem to be a slightly erratic side to Mark Kennedy as well, from what I can gather. Now, I don't know for certain on some of these things, but you do sort of get a sort of a sense, and maybe there's this feeling that he is quite um, he does go quite hard on his players sometimes, and there has been instances where people would say one thing behind closed doors and another thing publicly, and I don't know. I just feel like Michael Skabala seems more of there's an authenticity to Michael Skabala as well, and there's a real likability to him as well, and I'm sure he has that steely side too. But he seems to fit with the ethos and the direction the club wants to go in at the moment.
Yeah, look, I made no secret. I quite liked Mark Kennedy. I thought he had us maybe not playing attacking football, but you have to realise that we're Lincoln City in League One. We're not one of. It's not like when we were in the National League or in League Two when we're one of the bigger teams. And um, when you've got a league, sorry, where there's half of the clubs almost that have played in the Premier League whilst it's been the Premier League, you've got to be pragmatic and you've got to find a way to make sure that you stay in the league. And Mark Kennedy, to be fair to him, he did that, and even like you say, he pulled up performances against the bigger teams.
Mm.
I think Mark was really good at getting his teams up for the big games. So you look at our record against the 3 teams who got promoted, we only lost. Did we lose one? We unbeaten against Plymouth, unbeaten against Ipswich.
Mm.
I know we were unbeaten against Wednesday as well. So he was really good at that. The problem with Kennedy, and this is a real dilemma for Lincoln fans, because we don't quite know where we fit in the spectrum of League One. The games against the smaller teams that he found a lot more difficult to get them up for, and you saw that in results that against teams below us in the table last year we struggled. Whereas this year it's sort of gone 180. I tend to back us against teams below us in the table at the minute. Whereas if you look at our record against Portsmouth, we got beat. Posh beat us. Bolton have beaten us twice. Derby have beaten us and drawn with us. There's another one. No, that's it. That's the big four. Yeah, so it is good, Gab. But and Scoob, like you mentioned, is very open. He's very honest. I love the way that he answers questions and that he's so open. And with Mark Kennedy, you sometimes felt when you ask him a question, you got a closed answer. Whereas with
Mm.
Skabala, he gives you an open answer and then he explains as to why he's giving you that answer. And you can sort of see the cogs in Michael Skabala's brain ticking, and you can see that upbringing through school, football, and university,
Yeah.
and things like that.
Well, I was just going to say I had the name Skeleton Skibala. If you can,
Skeleton Scoop.
you can see the cogs in his brain ticking. I suppose a skeleton wouldn't have a brain, would they? So I suppose that doesn't quite work.
Yeah, Gav, what a bad analogy that was.
Awful, yeah.
Promote yourself. I'll host it.
Forget
I'll
that.
ask you, Gab.
Go on. Yeah. Do you know what? Yeah, I think he's done a really good job so far. And I wanted to come to you about Lasse Sorensen, Jake. Would you now put him in that category of those big assets for Lincoln City that could command high value going into the summer?
Absolutely, Gab. Since I think since we did a video, didn't we? A podcast where we ranked the League One right wing backs, and we decided that Kioso and Dakris Cogley were above him in the. And I will admit I did agree that those two were better than him. Well, Kioso now hasn't played for Posh for over a month now. He went back to Rotherham on New Year's Day, so that bumps him up a place. I think he'd give Dakris Cogley a real run for his money in terms of being the best right wing back in the league. He's phenomenal. To say we signed him as a central midfielder from Stoke City on a free. He's done really well since moving to right wing back, and it was a stroke of genius playing in there. And you have to look at his attacking output. I mean, if I can draw your mind back to the last time we played Charlton, not last night, the night before, the time before when we turned them over 3-1, he was electric. He was phenomenal. I think he had 11 shots, 5 on target in the game, scored a goal. And I think he's actually our top scorer. Five league goals this year. He's equally got a similar number of assists. He's really outperforming, and he's really making that position his own at the minute, Gab. And he's yeah, I think he is an asset. The club obviously, I believe the club have an option on his contract. So I don't know that for certain, but he is out of contract in the summer. But the club have an option. We're all hoping that he signs a new long-term contract because he's a real cult hero. And with Lasse Sorensen, Gab, you get the electrifying right wing back that is full of energy and has good attacking output and can stay really cold in those attacking situations. Then you've also got the bloke off the pitch. Like a little story for you. My mate, I've got a friend who watches your podcast, Gab, called Jack.
Oh, cheers, Jack.
He's a good friend of mine. He's also my hairdresser. So I should probably not show him what I've got going on at the minute. But I organised through the
I
club.
really like your hair that way, actually.
Yeah, it's a bit long
That's
on the sides.
right.
Jack needs to get his razor out. But yeah, we got a signed shirt through the football club. We sorted that, and Lasse Sorensen took his time of his day to make a video message saying, "Look, Jack, I know you can't get to home games because of your work and kids, and we're just really thankful for your support." And just the really nice touches, like he's won Community Champion of the Year at Lincoln pretty much every year he's been here. He's a really good bloke, and then, I think it's a Danish thing because Lucas Jensen's been doing something pretty similar, but. Yeah, just a great footballer and also a really great bloke, and one of those that I think you want in the dressing room because of it. He's that. I say he's influential, but he's just one of those really good blokes. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, you want to have those sorts of people representing your football club, don't you?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think I really like his sort of inverted the way he sort of drifts into almost like a number 8 position in from the right wing back spot, and I think that adds a lovely dynamic to the team and a sort of unpredictability, I guess, in that movement. I also feel though, Jake, I don't know what you think about this, that in those situations where it's like early build up play, you've got Alex Mitchell on the ball, sort of in that right centre back spot. You've got Sorensen really high up the pitch. I don't necessarily know if I'd want Danny Mandroiu to be the one collecting the ball in that situation because I'd actually want Mandroiu higher up the pitch. But because he's the right-sided midfielder, I feel like he probably thinks he's got to collect the ball. But I'm wondering if you could maybe reconfigure the midfield a little bit so that Mandroiu's maybe a bit centrally and you've got someone else more in the Erehon mould who's kind of collecting the ball off Mitchell so that it's less of an awkward situation for him. Because I don't think Mitchell's a brilliant ball-playing defender necessarily.
Yeah, that's interesting. The way that we're playing at the moment with the two up front, we don't really have a lot of width, and those wing backs are our width. So you look at, I bet you if you look at the the average positions of Sorensen and Rico Hackett from the weekend against Fleetwood, they'd literally almost be on the 18-yard line of the opposition because they were literally so high up the pitch. But when we play wide, we tend to play balls in the channels quite sort of especially since we've had Freddie Draper in the team, who was really good at running the channels for Walsall in the league below. And when you've got a player like Joe Taylor, as quick as he is, when you play balls into the channels, that's where he really benefits. And often, if we play through the middle, it tends to be of recent, it's been Teddy Bishop coming in and getting the ball. And then what Teddy Bishop can do is, I'm sure you're aware of how technically brilliant Teddy is.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
He's phenomenal. I wouldn't be surprised if he's one of the most foul players in the division in terms of when he gets the ball, all of a sudden there's two defenders on him. He's been really good at getting the ball deep because he's been playing in part of a three with Ethan and both Ethan Compound. But whilst Hamilton's been out for a little bit of time, it's been him and Conor McGrandles with Erahan. And Teddy gets the ball from deep, and he can just turn and twist and beat a man. And you saw the first booking for Boston Lawal on the weekend, just skins that two players, and then Lawal has we're in the final third already, and he has no choice but to bring him down, or else Lincoln have a real good opportunity. So I can understand what you say. I would back Alex Mitchell with the ball at his feet. Actually,
Okay.
He's one of the, maybe not as much as I would back Lewis Montsma because he can really ping the ball.
Yeah.
But especially out of our outside centre backs, maybe I'd have maybe the ones that are fit at the moment. TJ, I'd probably back to be able to play the ball really well down that side. I love Alex Mitchell, Gav. I won't lie to you. I'd love us to sign him permanently. He's been fantastic. G in the crowd up and some really good performances. He scored a winner away at Fleetwood as well. Nappers, if you're watching, you'll love that. But it's difficult because the way we play long term, Gav, and I know I've completely avoided your question.
No, go for it.
Long term, I think Scoobs is going to go four back. I think
Okay.
the idea will be is for Sorensen to be a really, really aggressive right back. And I think
Lasse Sorensen as a right back in a four, Jake.
Yeah, I quite like it. I quite like it. I can understand what your worries about it. But it looks like he wants to play a 4-2-3-1, Gav.
Right.
And I think whilst Sorensen, we've played a little bit of four at the back under Skibala so far, and Sorensen has played that right back role. So while Sorensen's going off and gallivanting up and doing whatever he does in the top third, you see so Alex Mitchell moves across and Erahan just slots in. So then you've got almost essentially like a working back four in there, and Lass has gone up to join the attacking players. So I think we'll play before, and then I think it will be Lass one side, and then maybe a bit more of a defensive option on the left, maybe like a Sean Rowan or somebody. Maybe we get a fullback in.
So you could go from being a general. No, let me just trying to work this through my head. So you go from being a general 3 to an in possession 4 to being a general 4 to an in possession 3, because then you've got Lasse Sorensen pushing forward, and then you've got someone like Sean Rowan shifting across with Mitchell and
or Jaden Brown maybe if he can come back from his loan spell in Scotland and cement a play. I don't think that's going to happen, unfortunately, because he's a really good player, but just hasn't worked out for him at Lincoln. But maybe that's because Cornell gave him a song and it didn't go down too well. But I imagine we'll be in the hunt for a left back, because if you're asking me, Sean Rowan is a way better left-sided centre back than he is a left back or a wing back. He's been phenomenal in the last couple of weeks on that left of a back three. We've got options, Gab, and this is what I like under Skibala. If one thing's not working, we try something else, and we've got the players now to be able to do that. Whilst we had injuries and suspensions and stuff like that, Skibala had his hands tied. Really, he could only play players in certain positions. He couldn't switch it around, and he'd turn around to the bench. And for example, the Blackpool game, we turned around to the bench and we had young Oisin Gallagher there, who's really, really talented and really excited for his future. but he's like 17, 18, and he's
mm,
he'd only just been on loan at Peterborough Sports in the National League North, so he's not quite ready to compete where we need him to. So I think now that he's got his options back, like House and Hackett and Teddy Bishop's put a really good run of form together and fitness, which was a real concern. He's got centre backs fit, got Mandroyu and O'Connor back from suspension as well. So
mm.
yes, in long ways, Gab, we've got options, and Scoobs is not afraid to use them.
um, I think what you mentioned there is that flexibility and that willingness to try something different if a system isn't working. Does that suggest we're looking at Lincoln City recruiting quite versatile players in the summer? Because I would imagine that to be able to flip from one formation to another in and between games, you're going to need players who understand different roles and different systems, right?
Yeah, I would suspect so. But if you look at a lot of our recruitment recently, I'd say a fair few have been pretty versatile. So I think you've got the likes of, let's say, Danny Mandroy, who came in not this summer, but the one before. He can play as a 10 or he can play out wide on the left. You've got Dylan Duffy, who is probably a winger, is in his primary position, but can play at wing back. You've got Jack Moylan, who can play as a 10, can play as a 9. You've got Rico Hackett play on the left, the right, or wing back. You've got Ethan Hamilton who can sit as a 6 or can play as Vance as a 10. I think he's the perfect
Mm,
midfielder in terms of all three positions. I'd say Ethan Hamilton can hold himself in the 10, the 8, and the 6.
mm.
And then you've got, when you go in further back, you've got Sorensen who can play right wing back and central midfield. You've got Lewis Monsma, who I think would be an unbelievable holding midfielder who can play centre back. TJ can play centre back and right back. You've got Sean Rowan who can play left back and centre back. Lucas Jensen can play anywhere, Gal, I've been told. But yeah, no, I think we're already recruiting very versatile players, and
Yeah, that's true.
and I think that benefit, especially when you take on young players as well. And this will be a whole another debate, but they literally soak it in like a sponge. If you look at the average
Mm,
age of our team, it's one of the youngest in the league, Gab. But I'd be surprised if it. I know Peterborough maybe have a younger squad than we do, but I can't see many younger than Lincoln. And they just take it in like a sponge, and they react to it all so well. And it's really good, Gab, that we can change it. And yeah, I think in the summer that if we'll be maybe to looking to recruit a striker that might be able to play out wide, or a fullback who can play in midfield, like a Zinchenko type, or something like
interesting.
that. So maybe we'll just take Zinchenko of Arsenal. They're not going to win anything this year. So, but yeah, no, I imagine and the recruitment will be very forward focused, Gab. To our knowledge, they've probably already signed about 5 players, Gab, because that's how switched on they are.
Yeah. Well, they've probably signed about 4 or 5 players and loaned them out to the League of Ireland, so that
Well,
they're
this is it,
ready to
mate.
go.
Well,
You know,
yeah,
it's
it's a good hunting ground. Gab. Maybe I can throw this back at you, Gab, but
oh,
because
go for it.
you've seen the success that Lincoln have had with the League of Ireland. We've currently got, how many lads have we got out on there? 3. We've got Zach Bradshaw at Dundalk. We've got Hayden Can and Oisin Gallagher at Drogheda. Do you think more EFL clubs should use the Irish market? Because I think there's some really good examples in playing in the EFL at the moment. So I can think of
Mm,
Toll that came over, and I think he was Northern Ireland, but came over from Ireland and has
yeah,
slotted in at Bolton. You've got Danny Mandroy, Jack Moylan, Dylan Duffy all at Lincoln.
yeah.
Max Matter made the move in the
Dawson
summer.
Devoy,
Dawson Boy,
Aidan Keena made a good initial impact at
yes.
Cheltenham. I tell you what, Jake, I would say yes, but with a bit of a caveat here. And I
Mm,
would say yes, but with reduced initial expectation. So the problem I think that EFL clubs have got in the Irish market is that to get these players, you've normally got to pay a transfer fee, right?
mm,
And for any club, for most clubs that are paying a transfer fee, unless they're in the championship and are pretty well off, you're kind of expecting an instant return for paying a transfer fee,
mm,
unless you're a really smart club like Lincoln City that can see the bigger picture with these sorts of
mm,
things, and you don't have a bad gate yourselves. But yeah, that's what I would say, because I think partly it's a level adjustment, but also
mm,
there's the nuance of the season in let me work this out. The season in Ireland ending in the winter,
November. Yeah.
and then anyway,
Yeah, it
there's
runs January to November. We're
yeah.
experts in this, Gab, now, Lincoln. We know exactly when the Irish season is.
I've explained it very badly there, but there's some sort of crossover where when their end of season is our our in anyway, something like that. So players don't
Even
get as much of
even
a
for
rest.
clubs that have got young players coming through. So like, I think of, and I listened to Robin's report earlier today, which is why this is on my mind. They've got a young lad. Is it King? Really, he's
Oh, Tom King, yeah,
yeah,
Cheltenham.
he plays England youth levels, I think.
I think he's under 18, or
Yeah,
something.
I like. I think I think clubs should be looking to loan their players through to Ireland, because if you, for example, if you have a youth player that's kicking around your first team in the January sort of time, so like we had, I'll give you an example. We had Freddie Draper, who was around the first team in January, but he's not going to play a lot of football because we'd signed a couple of strikers, think like the Ben House and Charlie Kendall, and someone else came in. I want to say Luke.
Tyler Walker.
This
Oh,
was.
year
I think
before.
this might be the John Marquis summer. Yeah, John Marquis came in. So Freddie clearly wasn't going to play. So then we sent him to Drogheda in Ireland. And you've seen it. We've done it with Sean Rowan, Hayden Cannon, Ocean Gallagher this year, Sam Long, and Elite Rahui the year before. Do you not think that clubs should be sending their young players to the League of Ireland? Because you can do a half season loan, so you can loan them until July, and then when they've had 6 months worth of first team football, or give or take 20 games of first team
Yeah.
football, you can then assess the situation in the summer window, where you're then, like with Freddie, for example, he's had a really good loan in Ireland. He's come back, his stock's quite high, and then we could automatically, because he's had a good couple of months in Ireland, we can then get him a higher caliber loan within the English pyramid. Because if you'd have said, if Freddie hadn't had that spell at Drogheda, I think he would have maybe gone out on loan to the National League or the National League North. Because he's gone and scored 8 goals in 20 games, he's been able to get to Warsaw, and you've seen the growth from Freddie is phenomenal.
Yeah.
Do you think that more EFL clubs should be looking down that sort of route? It's a really interesting.
I think so. Yeah, it does seem to work as a sort of an opportunity to give players a bit of space, because I don't know. I feel like for League One clubs, you've seen it sometimes sending players to League Two, where Liam Bennett. Well, Walsall have actually done this, because they picked up Freddie Draper, and they also picked up Liam Bennett from Cambridge.
Great.
The season before. But I think sometimes for League Two clubs picking up players from League One, there's this sort of, I don't know, that there's this sort of reluctance, I guess. I think clubs are maybe happier taking, Premier League loanees, because you feel more comfortable in the level of quality, because there's a perception that if somebody's perceived as not good enough right now to be part of a League One squad, are they going to be good enough to really make a difference in League Two? And then that's where you get down to the National League, which isn't far off League Two as a level. And then beyond that, it's National League North or National League South. And the League of Ireland is probably a much better standard than those leagues. So, yes, I think that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, and also I think with the, I know Lincoln has said this. I think they said it after we did a fans forum last week about having the international markets open this coming window, and the rules sort of changing around that is massively going to benefit this. I think they said that they nearly had one in January from really obscure country ready to come in, but the club pulled the plug on it. Do you think that's going to have much impact? Do you think we're going to see many international transfers? I see Notts County made one, didn't they? They signed a
Alessandro
striker.
Jota, didn't they?
Yeah, they signed a striker from abroad. Do you think we could see a bit more of that in League One in this summer?
I think it's going to depend on the clubs. I could definitely imagine really smart clubs that do their due Due diligence. Do their due diligence on
Yeah.
players. There we go. That are really quite open-minded in recruitment might go down that route. But I could also imagine clubs that are maybe more reticent about going into the European market that actually wouldn't fancy that sort of route. So I think it's going to depend on the clubs, really.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's something you can see Lincoln doing, isn't it? Because of the switched on nature of the board and the football departments and stuff. You wouldn't be surprised if we bring in some poor chap from out of Mongolia and he all of a sudden is a world beater and sells for a bit of money, would you?
Absolutely. Talking of being worth a bit of money, Ethan Errahon's going to
Oh,
be.
I knew that was coming.
I
What a
know.
player.
I know what 18 months it's been, or just under, for Ethan Errahon, and what an impact he's made at Sinsel Bank. Um, what do you think is going to be roughly the valuation that's going to lead to Lincoln City? Someone's
Difficult.
going to ask the tough questions, Jake.
Someone's got to ask a tough question, Gavin. And to be honest, I hope that if anyone asks Lincoln City that in the summer, they go, "No, thank you. We're going to keep him." But you have to be realistic. Do I think Ethan Erham will be a Lincoln player in 12 months? Difficult because he's extremely talented. How much would Lincoln be looking to get for him? I would say is it? You see, I had this chat with Nappers, right? And we were talking about Brendan Wirradu. Sorry to go off topic. We were talking about Brendan Wirradu, and he was saying to me that he thinks Brendan Wirradu, and I know fans have really weird perceptions because you did a thread on it a couple of months ago about who's your most valuable asset and what would you sell them for, or something like
Mm,
that. They were
yeah.
like League Two fans saying, "Oh, I would sell him for like £1 million." I'm thinking,
Mm,
hold on, he's half the player that like Teo Eden was, and we got 700k for Teo Eden.
mm.
Um, so if I'm being realistic, I think
I think.
I
Sorry, I think on that, fans always steer their judgment of financial assets for their football club
yeah,
in the direction of, we want to keep our best players
yeah,
available,
absolutely.
and we're only
That's
going to
what you
set.
should.
And I get that. Like, fans aren't necessarily business people; they're not necessarily going to be minded that way. You can't see a fan get excited by a balance sheet. Why would you be excited by a balance sheet? You want to see your best players there. But I think you've also got to respect there is a boundary there, and clubs do have to make difficult decisions.
Yeah, yeah, and we were having the conversation, and he turned to me and said that Brendan Wirradu is probably worth between 1.5 and 2 million, and I thought it's a bit
Jesus
steep.
Christ,
I thought it's a bit
blimey!
steep. Um, But
Really?
if I'm being realistic, Gab, and Lincoln, I know what Lincoln paid for Ethan Arahan, and it was a good fee. Not what was reported, but it was a good fee. I think Lincoln would be looking to make anywhere between 850k, 950k. I think Ethan Arahan is worth that sort of, and that's
Hmm.
being quite realistic because he's had a
Yeah.
tremendous 18 months.
Would you add a I don't know, bonuses or sell
I'd
on?
say, yeah, I'd say you'd probably say he's maybe worth about £1 million with everything added on,
Okay.
and that's me being realistic because he's a defensive midfielder. It's not the most sexiest of positions. What we have got on side is the fact that he's easily adapted to British football. He's already had about 4 or 5 years prior to joining Lincoln as a first team regular at St Mirren. So he's got 200 games already under his belt. And at 22, that's almost unheard of because you look at most under 23s and they've got maybe about maybe a £20 20 game loan spell here,
Hmm.
15 games there in the first team, 8 sub appearances. So I think that's in his benefit. His contract also would probably dictate that Lincoln have a bit of power on. He was signed on a long term deal. Um, but I think I'm being quite fair with that valuation.
Hmm.
Um, and look, if you're a championship club, maybe one that goes up this year, like a Derby or a Bolton, and you've got that money to spend, and you've got the luxury of watching him already play, and he played really well at Pride Park, and he played really well against Bolton a couple of weeks ago.
Mm.
I'd be all over it. If I was a Championship team and Ethan Erraham wasn't in my recruitment list, I think you can't be doing it wrong.
I
Especially,
tell you what, though, Jake, I actually think the sell-on percentage is almost more important than the
yeah,
transfer fee, because the difference between 750k and 950k, it's significant for Lincoln City. Don't get
yeah,
me wrong, but it's not as say Ethan Errahon gets sold by his next club for 10 million pounds, which could
yeah.
easily happen.
Mm.
You get a 20% sell-on
£2 million,
percentage. That's
yeah.
£2 million.
Yeah, well,
So.
Peterborough with Ivan Toney. If Brentford sell Ivan Toney, Peterborough are literally going to be made up for weeks and for years and years to come. So yeah, I think I trust the people in charge of negotiating the transfer fee to look after the club. You've seen with a lot of players that we've sold recently. So one that springs to mind is Charlie Kendall, and I came on here and I said, look, Charlie Kendall scores goals. He's going to be brilliant. We sold him to Woking in the January window because he hadn't hit the potential.
Mm.
But the club always put in the statement, "We remain a future interest on the player." So to me, that's always like, well, it's quite low risk because Charlie Kendall wasn't great in our first team. But if he goes to Woking, scores 20 goals, and then a League Two team play 250k for him, we get a little bit of something back. So I think the club have been quite good at doing things like that, and maybe that might tie into. I think like the Harry Toffolo deal, Gav, was a great example. When he
Mm.
moved to Forest from Huddersfield, we had a retained interest in Harry Toffolo. So when he moved to Forest, the club then were able to get a bit of money. So I think especially with an asset as big as Ethan Arahan, I think the club would be stupid not to put themselves a little
Yeah.
bonus because that kid could genuinely be worth. You've seen Adam Wharton go for £22 million
Mm.
in 4 or 5 years. Can I see Ethan Arahan being as good as him? I think I probably can.
Mm. Do you remember the Toffolo and Andrade partnership in the
Oh,
18-19
Gab. And Shane
title
McCartan in
win?
behind as well.
I
Oh,
know, yeah,
my
yeah.
God. Phenomenal.
They're lovely. So where was I? Yeah, I think with the possibility of Ethan Errahon getting poached, I wanted to talk to you about the midfield situation because as much as I completely agree with you about Teddy Bishop being a phenomenal technician, such an intelligent
Mm.
footballer, and he'll be, I'm sure he'll be key to your ambitions next season if he does stay on. I also feel like you want to manage expectation with Teddy Bishop and maybe start him Saturday to Saturday rather than play him
Yeah.
on in midweeks, or have some sort of strategy that sort of manages his minutes. Which makes me wonder: are we looking at two midfielders possibly coming through the door, or how are you looking in terms of the deeper squad for midfielders or players being loaned out? What's the situation there?
Yeah, so dependent on what happens with Ethan, let's say worst case scenario, because I'd love us to keep him, Gab, but
Of course.
it will be incredibly difficult. There will be teams coming that will come calling for him. I think Huddersfield we're looking around in January, and he's only been here a year, and they're in the Championship, so it tells you everything you need to know. I think we'll be able to keep a hold of Ethan Hamilton, and I think that's going to be huge. He's going to be a
Mm.
really big part of our team next year. I'm sort of thinking maybe even someone that takes the armband on. So that's how bigger influence I think he has on the football club. He's guaranteed to start in midfield for me.
Mm.
Um, Dependent on Conor McGrandles' situation at Charlton, if he's out of contract in the summer, would I be against him coming back? I don't think. I think I quite like that. Just to add a bit of depth, add a bit of
Mm.
experience, like he's doing now. He's really been. I know he's only played 2 games, but he was
Well,
really.
well, again, Jake, a bit like what we talked about with footballers who have that sort of universal, I know that's a bit of a posh term for it, but the universal mindset where they can take on different roles and
Yeah,
responsibility and do them with comfort. I feel
yeah.
like McGrandles is like that because he took on this sort of box to box goal scoring midfield role for Lincoln City in
Mm,
the playoff season under Michael Appleton. But
mm.
then for other teams, he's been a very solid holding midfielder as well. And I do feel like he can fill a multitude of roles depending on what you want from him.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think he could be a really useful player at this level. So yeah, if he's out of contract, then that'll be
Yeah,
amazing.
I definitely think that's one that the club will try to do. If we can get Conor McGrandles playing like he did in that playoff season, where I think he scored a lot of big goals, and he
Mm,
was really good that year. And then Teddy Bishop, I think, is a Teddy Bishop really splits opinion with Lincoln fans because everyone can see his technical ability and how good he is, and when Teddy Bishop's on it, my goodness me, he's on it. Like, he's so good to watch, so graceful with the ball at his feet. He can twist, he can turn. But then you've got the other side of Teddy, which has always followed him around a bit, is the injury history, and it's very difficult for him to play a run of 5, 6, 7 games, which is why we're a bit apprehensive going into Saturday because he's played 5 games in a row or something like that.
Who else have you got, by the way, Jake? Who else is in the squad at the moment?
So it's Ethan, it'll be Ethan, Teddy, Conor McGrandles, Hamilton's could be back for the weekend. He's been a bit tight.
I mean, it looks like he barely had a midfielder on the bench, Jake, at
Yeah,
Charlton.
yeah. Well, that'll be because Hamilton's injured
Of
and
course.
McGrandles couldn't play against Charlton because he's on loan from them. So we're a little bit depleted last night in midfield. It's still got a point, which was I think is a really good point away at
Yeah.
Charlton. But then you've also got young Ocean Gallagher coming back. He'll have been at Drogheda for the first half of their Irish season. He's really highly rated by the club. Really, really highly rated. They're
Forgive
really
my
good.
ignorance, Jake. What position in midfield does
So
Ocean
like
Gallagher play?
he's I'd say he's probably an 8, more similar to an Ethan Hamilton sort of type. So
Okay.
maybe in the summer we look to recruit the next Errol, the next 6. I think that would be a really wise investment. We can go and spend just a little bit of money on what we get for Ethan on another kid from Scotland, Ireland, wherever we can
Mm.
find them, and turn them into, if they can have anywhere near the impact that Ethan's had, then that's been good. But yeah, I imagine we might see one new midfielder with maybe a McGrandles returning or something like that in the
Mm.
summer. Yeah, it's difficult, Gab, because we've had so much debt. It's been a real strong position for us, especially the last couple of years. And it all stems on if we can keep Errohan. If we can keep Errohan in League One, Gab, next year, we could be we could be really dangerous. But if we
Mm.
lose him, we've just got to be clever enough to bring the next one in and hopefully can go for even more money.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to talk to you about Rico Hackett Fairchild,
Yes,
Jake, because
please.
he's someone who I wasn't, without sounding mean about it, I wasn't hugely fussed about the signing when he first came in, and I think his form was indifferent originally, but under Skabala, he seems to have found another gear, and he's looked a real threat lately.
I will tell you, Gal. I think it's from moving to Lincoln. It's really given him another gear because I could argue that he was really, really impressive early season. So
Okay.
I think about when we beat Wickham and he made his home debut, he scored, he won goal of the month for August of a strike
Mm.
away at Northampton, great strike, um, and he was really impressive. He got 4 assists in the first 6 weeks of the season, and then he got injured up at Fleetwood. So I think the whole move to the whole change in environment has been something that really has really helped Rico. It's no secret we nearly signed him in January, so about a year ago. The move fell through because Portsmouth couldn't get a certain Exeter playmaker that now plays for Bristol Rovers. I'll leave you to make your own mind up. That deal didn't go through, so we couldn't then get Rico 6 months earlier, which we wanted. But he came in the summer, and he's been phenomenal. I think coming from an environment when they're at Portsmouth, they're so pressured to get out of the division, and you didn't really have a regular spot in the starting 11. And I would say that Rico, I speak to Tom about this from T-Lob as well. He maybe perhaps wasn't loved, and he's a player that really needs to be loved and taken care of, and wrap your arm around the shoulder and say, "Oh, it's all right, Rico. Maybe you didn't play well this week, but we're still going to put you in next week because we believe in you." At Portsmouth, you don't really get that, and we sort
Mm.
of saw it a little bit. I'll take you back now, completely unrelated. When we signed John Marquis, so when we signed John Marquis in Portsmouth, they were basically saying, "Oh my God, he's awful, he's rubbish," but he came into Lincoln and kept us up. Lincoln fans still regard him as a bit of a hero, and
Yeah.
Rico's sort of becoming very similar. And you've seen, especially under Skabala, especially in recent weeks, I think 2 assists at the weekend, although I don't think he'll get the second one, but it definitely was a Rico assist. And then the goal last night,
Mm.
he's been phenomenal. He's been really phenomenal. We laugh and joke on T-Lop. He's a really good player. That left foot of his is a wand, Gab. He's been and he's played. I'd say that Rico's best position really is probably the right of a front three or wide of a midfield on the right, because he can cut in on his left foot. He
Mm,
can make crosses and cut in and cause that, because I remember he scored a free kick at Central Bank when he played for Portsmouth, and he whipped it right into the far corner. Phenomenal goal with his left foot.
mm,
But he's been playing left wing back in recent weeks, and he's been amazing. Like, we missed him so much when he was injured. Like, with just that, having that pace and that athleticism on the left hand
mm,
side. When we had Jack Burrows, who, no disrespect to Jack, is a good footballer, but isn't athletic and pacey and powerful. And I think you look at I'll highlight it again because it was such a good ball. And the first goal against Fleetwood on the weekend, that cross from his left foot into the box was pinpoint for Ben House. I'm smiling just thinking about it, Gav. That's how good it was.
mm.
But yeah, Rico's massive.
Yeah,
He's and the good thing is, I think Portsmouth fans are really happy that he's found somewhere where he's literally loved and cherished, and it shows you, Gab, what changing environment and going somewhere perhaps with lower expectations, can do for a
mm,
player. And I think it's a really good story for Rico. He's
yeah.
been
Go to Lincoln. No one will ever expect you to do anything. So it's just very, yeah, it's just very comfortable.
It's an easy ride, Gab, at Lincoln. We all love it. We love them too much. That's
No,
the problem.
no, absolutely. No, it's great to see him thriving with a new lease of life, and yeah,
Good
well
goal
done.
last night, Gab.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great
Fantastic
strike.
finish, wasn't it? And yeah, that bit of the fact that he's got that upper body strength as well, so he can hold the ball up a little bit from those diagonals,
Mm,
but he's also got that bit of directness in his game. It's
mm.
sort of multiple sort of tools in his armory, which is great. So, in terms of the summer, then you how many editions are we thinking? Is it going to depend, I suppose, on the retained list coming up?
Yeah, I imagine it will be dictated by how many we let go and how many of our assets we can keep a hold of. Um, if I go position by position, I don't think we need a goalkeeper. We've got Lucas, who's kept 11 clean sheets in the league this year, which is the third most of any goalkeeper. He's had a few shaky moments, but I think you have to stick with him. He's been really good, and he's still young as a goalkeeper at 24, 25. So, and we have Jordan Wright, who can step in
Mm,
as a number two, who's a very good number two. That I don't think he gets a lot of credit. In terms of centre backs, it'll be interesting to see who goes, because you think about the options we've got at the minute: O'Connor, Jackson, Rowan, Aoma, Montsma. Potentially, if we can sign Alex Mitchell, that's six. And if we play a back four, I don't think 6 into 2 goes too well. It does. It goes 3 times, but that's I don't think that's going to work. So for me, if you're asking me, I don't think we need to sign a centre back, because I think we'll be letting a couple go. Uh, Paulie O'Connor would probably be at the top of that list for me. I think he's been really good as a captain, but I think of the qualities that Sean Rowan brings. He's 20 years old, and he's a ball playing left-footed centre back. You don't get many left-footed centre backs. You've got TJ, who's quick and has been really good against aerial centre forwards. So we cope really well with Tyree Simpson, Uche Piars, who the like. And Jamie Reid, who was really good that day at Stevenage. Montsma difficult because he's had back-to-back ACL injuries.
mm.
So
He's not played much, has he, Jack?
no, this is the thing. But he's so tremendously talented.
Mm.
We all saw that COVID season where I think he
Oh,
scored about eight goals between the
the
start.
one at Crewe was the one for me, Jake.
Oh, the
Absolutely,
volley, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
absolutely.
It was the one at Rochdale for me, Gav, 30 yards out, and he bulleted it into the bottom corner. Yeah, whether you give a contract to him. And then you've got Alex Mitchell and Adam Jackson. Adam Jackson, player of the season. He
Mm.
stays next year. Absolutely been phenomenal this year.
I could see a world where you actually shift Alex Mitchell into the middle of a back three and possibly bring TJ Amer on the right.
Yes, I completely agree. But yeah, so I don't think we'll be doing a lot of business in the centre back area. If we can keep Sorensen, absolutely great. Left back wise, I think we'll probably be recruiting a left back or a full back either side.
Mm.
I think the club would like that to be Jack Burrows. He's done really well since coming in on loan from Coventry, been a steady hand, and obviously offers that versatility. He can play either side because he's so good with both feet.
Now, how old is Jack Burrows? Let me
I
have
want to
a
say he's 23. I don't.
23, because if he's 23, I reckon Coventry are unlikely. Yeah, 22. I'm not sure, that Coventry, for the trajectory that they're on, they're going to see him as part of their long-term
Yeah.
plans. If he hasn't broken in by 22, or I suppose 23, he'll be by the summer. I reckon you've got a decent shout at getting him permanently if you want to.
Yeah, I think that would be a really clever one. I think we spoke about the midfield additions going forward. Do we need a striker? I'd say we've got three pretty good ones on the books when fully fit in Ben House, Freddie Draper, and Tyler Walker. I think
Do you
Tyler.
think, Jake, you've got the option of going with Danny Mandroyu behind, and then having like I don't know, Rico Hackett, Fairchild, and then maybe Draper or House as sort of like a fluid front three? So you've got kind of Mandroyu drifting into the pockets from wide positions. You've got Rico Hackett, Fairchild pushing into a second strike position from maybe the right, and then Draper or House,
Is
finishing it
this
off.
next season, Gab? Next
Yeah,
season?
that's what I was thinking.
I would be very surprised if Danny Mandroy was a Lincoln player next season. Be
Ah,
very surprised.
well,
So he's out of contract in the summer. I don't think he's going to sign another one. I imagine he might go back over to Ireland, which would be a real waste because he's really talented. But I sort of see where Mark Kennedy was coming from now when he called him out in that post-match press conference after we got beat by Burton. I can see where he's coming from. His attitude just hasn't been. This is how it looks from the outside. Obviously, I'm not saying that Danny Mandroy is a troublemaker, but from the outside, it just looks like his attitude can be questioned a little bit. And I think the club will want to be able to rely on players likes of Arahan or Hamilton in midfield.
well, Jake, in that case, he started the Charlton game, right? I feel like if he's
But he
not
had to
okay, but
because
then is there a world where you've got someone else in the sort of Dylan Duffy or
Jack Moylan.
Jack Moylan role who can play as sort of an attacking midfielder option?
I think we might be in the market for a 10 this summer, or if we buy a really good 6, I think you could maybe look at putting Teddy Bishop as a number 10. I
Mm.
think he's really good at creating opportunities out of nowhere. He gets a lot of key passes per 90 and can really thread the ball through really nicely, and also can really finish. I think Teddy Bishop's since his time since arriving at Lincoln, he's been pretty good in front of goal when he needed to be. So I think maybe Teddy can step into that 10. I think the real aim for next year, Gab, will be for Jack Moylan to really make that number 10 position his own.
Mm.
He was phenomenal coming on last night away at Charlton.
Yeah, I do I saw some really good jinking runs from Jack Moylan as well. I would kind of, if I'm in Scabala's shoes, I'd be inclined to give him a run of starts between now and the end of the season. Just give him a bit of momentum.
Yeah, absolutely. Because he's got an eye for goal because he scored 15 goals in. I know it's the Irish League, but he scored 15 goals for a team that weren't top of the Irish League that came fourth. So he's clearly
Mm.
got a good knack of finding the net. So yeah, I think we'll be looking to build around in terms of an attacking point of view next year. I think you're looking at building around Dylan Duffy, Jack Moylan, Rico Hackett, Ben House, and Freddie Draper. That's a pretty young and pretty good 5. You may be looking to sprinkle in maybe a loanee from the Premier League or another loanee from the Championship, similar to what we've done with Joe Taylor.
Mm.
A similar sort of loan to Joe. That would be good. So I think maybe you're looking at, I'd say 5 or 6, maybe to add a bit of squad depth as well. Where those 5 or 6 are going to be from, Gab, I've got no idea. It could be Asia, Australia, America. Obviously, with the American investment now being the majority shareholders, we could get some young Americans to come over. Ireland's been a good market for us. So I'm excited, Gab. I'm really excited because the club are really good at recruitment. And yeah, it is very exciting. There's nothing like when your club announce they're about to announce a signing, is there? And you get all excited thinking. And when you're a Lincoln fan, you're like, who on earth is this? Because it don't come out, it doesn't get leaked. You're like, who is this? Like, we're not been
Do
Lincoln
you know what
fans.
it is? It's like there's an announced signing a player that you've never heard of, and then 10 minutes later you're convinced that it's going to be like
Oh yeah,
this player's going to be
absolutely.
brilliant. Yeah,
Yeah,
but no,
absolutely.
I'm really genuinely, I'm really excited to see what Lincoln can do next season because I've got so much faith in the recruitment team and the structures in place at the club. So I think it's an exciting future for Lincoln City. Lots of excitement and lots to look forward to for the remainder of the season as well, of course. And hopefully we can see a few more budding youngsters come through. Yeah, good times ahead at Sinsel Bank, I think. Jake, thanks so much for talking to us on EFL Debate. And thanks to you for watching at home. This has been the EFL Debate podcast, Lincoln City in Focus. We'll see you again with normal service on League One resumed next week.